Hey guys, welcome to this week's ACVC. I'm taking you behind my own scenes and share with you some of the thoughts that I used to prepare my mind last week. This week, 3 thoughts specifically that I thought about. One is the topic of timeless substance in construction tech. The second one is the mentality of being a polar bear when you're investing, but also counts when you're a founder. And the third one is my colleagues and I were looking at construction robotics for a while now. And we think that construction robotics winners might actually look different than what many might expect. So let me walk you through this week's topics that prepared my mind. On the topic of timeless substance, I shared a LinkedIn post that you find under the link here that asked the community, hey, what are all the time-bound things, the trends that we caught over the last 5 to 10 years in construction tech together as a community that raised a lot of money in a short amount of time, but actually then fell off a funding cliff. And so I had given a few examples myself where, for example, drone-based inspections, quick commerce for construction sites were 2 of the categories that had seen very large amounts of funding in a short period of time into the whole category, but then the category fell off a cliff in terms of capital allocation. And so some people shared more insights here, what other categories are that. I'll not repeat those here. I thought that was a very interesting thread that you can find in the link. Just go to the link and you see all the examples. But I think the overall point is very interesting. For me, my taste as an investor has been shaped very much by the timeless substance, because I have made the experience and earned the conviction that if you want to truly build a generational construction tech company, the hype or the time-bound trends will not get you there in most of the cases. Your statistical probability is very low to begin with, and it's even lower if you're building on a hyped trend or a time-bound trend. Eventually, if you start in a time-bound trend, it can still work, but you need to use the time that you have to collect a lot of capital to actually then build timeless substance into it that persists the trends and that allows you to build something that is relevant over time, regardless of how the circumstances change. So that's something that I love finding in construction tech and that I think that founders should also be after. So look for timeless substance, and if you can accelerate yourself through a phase of hype, that can still make sense, but it is an accelerant. It is not the end goal, most likely. The second thing is, together with Crunchbase, we published an op-ed this week about the mentality of being a polar bear. And I love the metaphor that we use there, which is, hey, you can be a polar bear or you can be a buffalo on the Great Plains. The buffalo walks in herds. The buffalo finds certainty and safety emotionally, but also physically being in the herd. And that is a great metaphor for sometimes for some of the things that you can do as a founder, but mostly as an investor, where if you move in herds, it feels more certain to you. You do the things that other people have done. You back a category that has been backed before. But eventually the plains only have so much nutrition. And eventually you will have to move on because the plains have been grazed. Now the polar bear in nature operates very differently in what many people would consider a hostile territory, right? So, in the Arctic Circle, let's say in the most drastic example, and you have to hunt for fish under, a meter, 2 meters thick of ice sheets. And somehow the polar bear has found a way to have an almost supernatural intuition for where the fish are under this thick sheet of ice. It might look magic, but it's not magic. It's just repetition. It's how the polar bear has learned the subtle signals of its environment, of this very hostile environment, to have a higher success rate of finding fish, and with that, a higher success rate of surviving in this environment. Now, what's great for the polar bear is where the polar bear is, there's almost no food competition, right? So that's why it works for the polar bear. It's hard to be a polar bear. It's hard to be in that environment. And I imagine a polar bear is not always successful at finding the fish under the thick sheet of ice. So it's less comfortable. It's less emotionally rewarding for sure. And that metaphor works into construction tech, investing, but also founding. So going back to the topic of timeless substance, if you're looking for the fish under the thick sheet of ice, you have to live with the fact that you're probably trying to find food in your early years where nobody else even dares to try. And that might mean that it's not easy for you to raise capital for what you're building. infra market in our portfolio took 4 years to actually raise capital from us and other investors for the first time. And that's not very rewarding to you as an investor, it can be, as a founder. It can be much more rewarding to be in a hyped category and to get rewarded by big up rounds, but perhaps you raised 100 million and only have 1 million in ARR. These things happen, guys. So is that really something that will help you be a better polar bear, or is it something that feels more like a buffalo, but eventually you have to move on to graze? Eventually you will have to find the time and substance. And so the mentality of the polar bear is something that we have really loved in this metaphor. And we're trying to embrace. It's not easy. I don't think we succeed all the time, but hopefully we succeed more than we want to. And so that's the mentality of the polar bear that we've embraced. Click the link, we've written the entire op-ed here together with Crunchbase. And then finally, construction robotics might look different than what you expect. When you think of construction robotics, you might think of great automation, full automation, near full automation. Lately, I've been pitched humanoid robots for construction sites. All of that seems very techy. Actually, let me blow your mind. I think that the most generational construction robotics companies will be multi-product companies built on top of carrier platforms and with a very strong modular software stack in the background, but actually the tooling is provided by a community of OEMs onto these construction robots, and they might not even all be autonomous. Many of them might be teleoperated or semi-autonomous, but you're rolling out a fleet of different carrier platforms where task by task can be automated. And that happens because the construction sites trust the manufacturer, the startup, the OEM of that construction robotics company. And because that is a little bit lower tech than what the general lore about construction robotics is in the West, it might come from the East as well. It might come from very unfamiliar places in the American Midwest or in European ecosystems that you're not looking into. Because it might not be about high tech, high tech in terms of the hardware and the full autonomy. It might be about getting the most platforms shipped, the most adoption, the most shipping velocity, the most adoption velocity, building software around that allows you to be very quick in making adaptations and over-the-air updates to the carrier platforms and the tooling, and then allow the entire OEM ecosystem to build more and more tooling on top of these carrier platforms. I find that a fascinating thesis, and I'm actively looking for that for construction robotics. If you happen to know someone that does that, please ping me. I'd love to talk to them, and you find more in the link here. So this is how I prepared my mind this week. Thank you, guys. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe under acvc.com, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. See you next time.